Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be casting our ever-critical eye over another 10th edition Imperial Guard Codex datasheet. This time, we will be doing a deep dive of the Hydra, the premier anti-fly unit of the Emperor's true finest. In the past, the Hydra has suffered a little bit. Sometimes it's had rules which have made it massively over-specialized and almost unplayable in a regular game of 40k, or it's just been overshadowed by just bigger main battle tanks. But now we're in 10th edition, now we've got our Codex, and now I think the Hydra, I think it's got something to offer. Dare I say it, I think the Hydra's actually pretty good. And with that ringing endorsement, let's not mess around any further. Let's dive right into this thing. As is tradition, we're going to start off with the datasheet review of the Hydra, and then towards the end of the video, we'll get into some of the tactics and what has changed, which has started to make me look upon the Hydra a bit more favourably. Let's start off with the stat line, and the truth is that the Hydra has a relatively standard issue stat line for a vehicle which is based off the Chimera chassis. We've got a movement of 10 inches, which is pretty normal for most guard vehicles. It's not super fast, but it'll get you where you need to go. And with the Hydra having a movement of 10 inches, it does mean that it'll be able to keep up with the rest of your tanks, like your Hellhounds and also your Leman Russes. Defensively, we're looking at toughness 9, 3+ save, and 11 wounds. By 40k standards in general, that's an okay defensive profile. It's not too bad. It means that you'll be able to shrug off plasma, although Melter will be a bit of a threat to you because it can wound you on 4s. A 3+ save with the benefit of cover will help you shrug off small arms and a lot of lighter sort of special and heavy weapons like autocannons. But true anti-tank weapons, we're talking AP -3 or higher, will start kicking you down to a 5+ or 6+ save, or might even deny you having a save at all. 11 wounds is a good break point though, because it means that it typically takes one extra shot for your opponent to knock you out. We're not just talking about one extra damage one shot, but it's really good for being able to resist damage 2 weapons, of which there are quite a lot of damage 2 weapons in the game. Leadership of 7 is nothing special, nothing to write home about. It is what you have on nearly every single guard unit except things like commissars. What is worth noting though is objective control of 3. Now, considering that this is basically a Chimera stat line, the fact that the Hydra has got objective control of 3, whereas a Chimera has only objective control of 2, is actually pretty nice. And don't underestimate OC3 as a good breakpoint. It means that you can get this vehicle and maybe one other one onto an objective, and if it's being held or being contested by some sort of elite infantry unit, then maybe 5 guys with 1 OC each, then you'll actually out OC them. Also, like I said, it means that most other sort of light vehicles in this category, in this weight category, you will out OC them. If your opponent puts a Rhino onto an objective and you put a Hydra on, you're going to out OC them. If you were to just put a Chimera on, you would equal their OC. No one would get the points there. But by being able to out objective control someone with this cheeky extra OC3, it's actually not bad. I don't want you thinking it's going to be potentially war winning. It's the best thing about the Hydra. It's a nice to have. Don't forget it is OC3. You might find 1 in every 10 games, it actually turns out to be pretty important. So that just about covers the Hydra's stat line, but what about its weapons and war gear? Standard issue for the Hydra is a heavy bolter and Hydra autocannon with armoured tracks. War gear options are kind of limited. You can swap the heavy bolter for a heavy flamer, and you can just give the Hydra a hunter killer missile. Now, you might as well always go for the hunter killer. It is free. There's no advantage for leaving it at home. As the heavy bolter versus heavy flamer, the Hydra does tend to be a more long-ranged unit. So I would say go with the heavy bolter. It just feels like the right option. The Hydra's firing lots of bullets. The heavy bolter is more bullets. So that just feels right. In terms of what each of these weapons do, the heavy bolter is a normal guard heavy bolter. Sustained hits 1, 36 inch range, 3 shots, ballistic skill 4+, strength 5, AP -1, damage 2. it is a light infantry killer, and it'll pick up a marine or two here and there thanks to its damage too. The Hunter Killer Missile is actually a pretty decent anti-tank weapon with a 48-inch range, ballistic skill 4+, strength 14, AP -3, damage D6. Of course, it is a one-shot weapon, so you only get to fire it once in the game. Once it's gone, it's gone. The thing with Hunter Killer Missiles is you don't really want to think of them as individuals. You want to think about how many you're bringing in your fleet of vehicles. One Hunter Killer Missile doesn't tend to do a lot. But if you're running a lot of vehicles, we've got Hellhounds, Hydras, Lehman Russes, Chimeras, Sentinels. Hunter Killers get slapped onto pretty much every guard vehicle I can think of, except maybe the Rogal Dawn. So one of them on their own doesn't do a lot, but when you end up with 6, 7, 10 of them in a list, they can actually start doing a decent amount of damage, especially if launched en masse. But the big thing, and the reason why we're all here, is the Hydra autocannon. This is one of the defining things of the Hydra, the other being its ability, which we'll get to in a moment. On the surface, the Hydra autocannon does look a bit like a normal autocannon, strength 9, AP -1, damage 3, but it does have a few things that set it apart and make it pretty decent. Firstly, it's anti-fly 2+. Now, I want to make sure you all understand what that means. That's not anti-flyer, that's not anti-plane, that is anti-fly. So anything in the game with the fly keyword, whether that's jump pack intercessors, or whether that's a big flying vehicle of some kind, anything in the game which has the fly keyword, this thing will wound it on a 2+, regardless of its strength or versus toughness value. It's also twin linked, which means that it has inbuilt full rerolls to wound as well. Now that does pair quite nicely with the flak battery ability, and we are getting ahead of ourselves, but I do find like the Hydra autocannon and the flak battery ability are kind of intrinsically linked. It's like a symbiotic relationship. So flak battery means each time this model makes an attack that targets a fly unit, again anything with the fly keyword, you can reroll the hit roll. So that means when you are shooting against something with fly, you actually have full rerolls to hit and full rerolls to wound. And even if you're not shooting at something with fly, you still have full rerolls to wound, because the twin link just works all the time, not just against fly units. Now the Hydra does have a very long range on its autocannon as well, 72 inches. The reality of the situation is you're probably not going to really need 72 inches. And in fact, you're probably going to be thinking about getting into a 36-inch range bracket so you can benefit from the heavy bolter as well. Because don't forget, the heavy bolter does benefit from flak battery, because as each time this model makes an attack. So if you're shooting something with fly, the heavy bolter gets 4 rerolls to hit, and the Hydra autocannon gets 4 rerolls to hit. And interestingly, the Hunter Killer Missile would also get a full reroll to hit as well, making it much more reliable even as a one-shot weapon. So the range is a bit of a gimmick. Really, you want to be thinking about 36-inch range bracket. It does fire 4 shots, which is twice as much as a regular autocannon. However, small criticism here of the Hydra. I do feel like the volume of shots from the Hydra autocannon is a little low. Especially when you compare this thing to something like a Lemus Exterminator, which is going to be getting 8 shots at close range with its autocannons. I don't know if this should be 8, but I think if the Hydra autocannon fired 6 shots, it would go from being a pretty decent, a pretty good vehicle, to actually being downright impressive. But even with that, the Hydra is looking pretty good. But this hasn't really changed from the index. So why was the Hydra a bit of a outsider in the index? There was a few times where people made it work, but why was the Hydra generally overlooked in the index, and now it's starting to be seen favorably in the codex? Well, the first reason that I've kind of struggled with the Hydra in the past is the fact that it's only AP -1, and there tends to be a lot of cover around the board these days, so that really did feel like quite a limiting factor. But if I'm going to be honest, that wasn't really the big thing that put me off the Hydra in the end, because at the end of the day, this thing is only, what, like 85, 95 points. There's going to be a limiting factor somewhere, right, to get an armored vehicle for this price point. No, the big issue with the Hydra in the past was order economy. In the index, orders for vehicles were very limited. Tank commanders could only do one order, and the only other way you could get your vehicles to be ordered was really via the Lord Solar. And his attention was typically in demand elsewhere, with ordering things like Bulgrin around, ordering guard super heavies. He was the only way you could order guard super heavies, or just being the most efficient way of getting 3 vehicle orders in one nice, neat package. But that has changed now with the Codex. Firstly, tank commanders can do 2 orders now, and secondly, combined arms flexible command. So this is a stratagem in the guard combined arms attachment, which costs 2 command points. You do it in your command phase, and any number of Astra Militarum officer units from your army can then issue orders to both regiment units and squadron. So this means that tank commanders can order vehicles and infantry, and it means, more importantly, infantry commanders can order vehicles as well as infantry. Now, whilst this is a somewhat expensive stratagem, it's actually fairly easy to manage its 2 CP cost. Firstly, you've got Creed, who can reduce the cost of the stratagem down by 1. And secondly, you've got Voxcasters. And considering this can affect every Astra Militarum officer in your officer unit in your army, and typically they're going to be attached to blobs of infantry which are going to have Voxcasters, you can pretty much guarantee that thanks to Voxcasters, you're going to recoup this CP cost. So in essence, this thing will cost you 0 CP if you build around it. Now, what's interesting, when you think of flexible command in terms of Lehman Russes, it actually ends up being a bit of a trap, because it's actually cheaper to take, let's say you've got 5 Lehman Russes, it's actually cheaper to take 2 commanders with Grand Strategist and then have like 3 Lehman Russ Vanquishers than it is to start bothering with like a Creed command blob. So if you think in terms of main battle tanks, flexible command can end up being a bit of a trap. But what if you don't think in terms of main battle tanks? What if instead you think in terms of support vehicles and lighter armor, like the Hydra? If you take a battery of 3 Hydras and you have, let's say, Creed nearby to order them, it will only cost you 350 points. That's an absolute bargain for that amount of firepower. If you went for just 2 Hydras and a Castellan to order them around, it's going to cost you less than 250 points. You know before how I said the volume of shots from the Hydra was a bit of an issue? Suddenly, it's not so much of an issue if you are being able to spam them and order them cheaply. That was always the problem in the past. The Hydra itself may have been cheap, but the hidden order tax, the hidden cost of the officers that had to be taken to order it around, and the limited amount of orders that were available. Like typically you'd only have like 5 vehicle orders available in a guard army, like one tank commander with Grand Strategist and the Lord Solar. Now, that's just not a thing. You can have multiple waves of Cadians with like Castellans and command squads in them. The command squads just order the Cadians anyway. So now you've got a bunch of Castellans just benefiting from Master Vox being able to order cheap armor like Hydras. And I think this concept of light armor spam can really be expanded out. We're looking at this just through the lens of the Hydra right now, but what about combining Hydras with things like Hellhounds with melter cannons? Because if your Hellhounds can receive cheap orders as well, then the Hellhounds could remove cover suddenly, because it doesn't matter if it's got a melter cannon or an inferno cannon, it still removes cover thanks to its ability. Suddenly the AP -1 of the Hydra isn't such a problem. Hellhounds are only 125 points. Hydras are only 95 points. There's quite a lot of potential there with spamming Hydras and spamming Hellhounds and going down like a light armor mechanized route. To be clear, and to set expectations a little bit, I haven't tried this out. This is very much a theorycraft, and I think that this feels like more of a bit of a meme list, a bit of a themed list, but it can be possible for themed lists to be powerful, or to at least have the capability of winning games. They might not win tournaments, but it might be a fun concept to try out at a local RTT, or to have a bit of fun with your mates, see if it works. And I think there's enough potential there for it to translate onto the tabletop in some capacity. But the other way of looking at this is not to go full send on the memes. Look, I know that's what we all love to do, but the other way of looking at this is to be a bit more sensible about it. Rather than being like, okay, instead of taking Leman Russes, I'm going to go down this route of all the lighter armor. What about using both? It would be entirely possible for you to take a bunch of Leman Russes, tank commanders, all the usual stuff that works nicely together, Rogel Dawns and whatnot. And when you've got your sort of 4 or 5 normal tanks, you could be like, well, I'm just going to add in a couple of Hydras with Statline. Pretty cheap. All I'm really giving up is maybe the cost of a blob of infantry. And I'll just use these guys kind of like an infantry blob. A couple of Hydras driving around. Good screening potential. Good firepower. I think you can go full send meme. But I think there's also just the idea of if you're someone that really doesn't like the idea of painting up like 100 guardsmen, you're like, God, like the most I can give you is like 60 before I end up giving up because it's a bit of a grind painting guard infantry. Or if you're someone that prefers vehicle-based tactics over infantry-based tactics, the idea of being able to get to your list and just slap a couple of Hydras in there with the Statline, boom, done. I think that's quite attractive, and I think it does open up this idea of the Creed command blob as well. You could end up with, let's say, 4 Leman Russes, 2 tank commanders, and 2 regular Russes. Like maybe Vanquish keep them a bit cheaper. Then you go for like a Creed command blob, and the Creed command blob's got Creed in it, it's got the command squad in it, and it's also got the 10-man Cadians to keep them to glue it all together. And you go, okay, well, I need something that can order my artillery. Okay, well, Creed can do 2 orders over there. I've got a couple of Hydras, chuck those in. All of it can be ordered now. I think there are ways of really including this in your army, and there's multiple layers of commitment. You can either go all in, or you can just go and use this as an extra tool in your toolbox in what otherwise would be considered a fairly normal list. To summarize all of this, the Hydra's data sheet hasn't really changed all that much. Fundamentally, it's still the same cheap Dakka tank. But what has started to make it more attractive is the fact that its traditional barriers, being like, well, struggling to get orders, have kind of gone away, especially with new combined arms attachment. And so now looking at this thing and seeing it with orders and it not taking orders away from potentially more valuable tanks, I really think it started to show some potential and starting to shine. At least that's what I think. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Do you think this theory has some merit? Do you think there's something to it? Or are you the kind of person that just is like, you know what? I know what works. 5 Leman Russes, 3 Leman Russes, and a Dawn, double Dawn. That's where my armor core is going to be. That's where I'm going to stick. Let me know what you're thinking about this. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget, as always, to go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.